I mentioned Emma DeSouza earlier. She was the woman who brought that case about citizenship and the Good Friday Agreement. And as I think made perfectly clear to you, I was a little confused about some elements of it. So I'm delighted to tell you that she's on the line now. I don't know if you heard my attempt at explaining things, Emma, but I suspect you can probably provide us with some clarifications or even corrections.
I did indeed. Thank you firstly so much for raising it today. And, I think you did a great job at trying to get into the meat of the issues there. You're not wrong, but there is a little bit of clarification that we can do.
Good.
In the sense that what's really happening here is, as you say, we're dealing with the fact that 21 years after the Good Friday Agreement, it turns out the British government never amended their nationality laws to line up with that right under the Good Friday Agreement to be Irish or British or both. Now, it's not that we are not recognised as Irish citizens, because only the Irish state can decide who is or isn't an Irish citizen.
Right.
But what's happening is the British government is imposing British citizenship on people that don't necessarily want it, such as myself,
yes,
who only see themselves as being an Irish citizen, as I believed I had under the Good Friday Agreement the right to be. And what's happening is, with that additional citizenship, they are using that as a sort of British first, Irish second policy. And with that additional citizenship, they're blocking our rights to EU rights and entitlements. The one that I'm experiencing a block to at the moment is family reunification. So I can't access my full rights as an Irish and an EU citizen. Irish citizens in Northern Ireland have a different set of rights to Irish citizens who were born across the road, in Donegal instead of Derry. So you do have that issue where those that are born in Northern Ireland are not being treated as Irish. We can't access our full rights as Irish. And we're having our rights under the Good Friday Agreement removed. But by law, we are technically still Irish citizens. We just, in the UK, are being considered British first, Irish second, and that's what's happening.
No, I get it. And so the opposite experience, which I think your appeal, the ruling brought into play, was that if I wanted to be dual citizenship, if I wanted to avail myself of Irish citizenship, I'd have to renounce my British citizenship first.
Well, this is the thing. So there's this whole extra issue of, what about dual nationals in Northern Ireland who are quite happy being a dual national,
yes,
who want to have British and Irish citizenship? Well, guess what? If you want to have both, then you can't access all your rights as an Irish citizen. You have to first go through the process of renunciation of British citizenship and give one up. And that process is quite difficult and bureaucratic, and can be traumatic for some people, especially when you're dealing with a region where identity is so complex and really was quite sensitive for a long time. So the process involves you declaring that you're British, paying £372, giving up your freedom of movement for 6 months, and then afterwards you could be given the boot, because technically you can be deported from Northern Ireland, I guess, down to Dublin or something, once you've renounced British citizenship. So it's a big legislative gap here when it comes to what's happening in Northern Ireland. And
so if
the real issue is...
Yeah, go on, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
If I'm British in Northern Ireland, I don't have an Irish passport, what do you understand my freedom of movement to be if Boris Johnson's... And I may be pushing you into territory that you're not fully across, and God knows I don't know anyone who is, but including Boris Johnson, it would appear from last night's comments. But what do you understand their status to be in the context of freedom of movement?
Well, British citizens in Northern Ireland won't have any freedom of movement because they won't be considered EU citizens. And that in itself, you're raising a very valid point here, because under the Good Friday Agreement, there can be no differential or detrimental treatment between the communities. It has to be equal. Whether you're Irish or you're British or you're both, you're supposed to have the same rights.
Yes.
And that's not what's happening with Brexit, because Irish citizens will maintain the minimum of freedom of movement, but will have to go through this process of renunciation of British citizenship. Dual nationals are in some sort of limbo area where they don't know what rights they have. And British citizens in Northern Ireland, well, they don't have any freedom of movement. So we're kind of being separated and segregated into all these different categories of rights. And that in itself is completely against the spirit and the letter of the Good Friday Agreement.
Did you hear what Boris Johnson said last night in Belfast?
I have missed that particular little snippet. Do you want to share it with me?
Yeah, I'll share just this little bit here, which is pertinent to the conversation that we're having. Here it is.
It's got a great deal. You keep free movement, you keep access to the single market, but you also have, as it says in the deal, unfettered access to GB.
You keep free movement. He's saying that to everybody in Northern Ireland, I think, or possibly just to the business community.
Yeah, this is the thing, is that this is what we've been dealing with ourselves, with our case going on throughout the whole Brexit negotiations, is this is complete nonsense that they're saying. On one hand, they're saying you will keep these rights, you'll keep freedom of movement, but in letter and in practice and in law and in policy, all of that is not true. If you look at the fact that people in Northern Ireland can't even access the EU settlement scheme, even though all other EU citizens can in the United Kingdom, there's all these barriers being put in place for Northern Ireland that, Boris was happy to come out and say that we have these rights, but we know it's not true. And her case itself demonstrates that there is no will or political appetite to find a solution that is compatible with these provisions under the Good Friday Agreement, because if they were trying to find a solution, they wouldn't be dragging us through the courts.